Greetings all and welcome to Anela View. Today we are looking at Cliques Modernos, which is the third solo album by legendary Argentine musician Charly Garcia. This album is widely known as his best as a solo artist, with Charly himself claiming that it's the best album he's ever made in his life, and it's also considered one of the greatest albums to ever come out of Argentina. In 2013, Rolling Stone placed this album at number 2 on their list of the greatest Argentinian rock albums of all time. It was created during the tail end of the near-decade-long military dictatorship and has themes of this throughout. It was recorded in Electric Lady Studios in New York with ex-bandmate and fellow Argentine Pedro Aznar, a few American musicians, and also American producer Joe Blaney, who is well known for producing bands such as The Clash, The Ramones, and Prince. In recent years, it has gained more international attention, with various English-speaking people doing reaction videos to the songs from the album, and even a member of Tame Impala at one point sharing a song from the album to his Instagram story. Now this may not seem like something spectacular, but believe me, the Argentinians absolutely love this because they really do like their music being shared in the first world, as it does rightly deserve to be. Nowadays, this album is available to listen to via various streaming services such as Spotify and YouTube, and during the 2020 lockdown, it was actually reissued for the first time since its initial release in 1983, making it now more accessible than ever. And today we're going to be exploring what makes this album. But before we get into the music, I'm going to focus on the work of art that is the cover. So during the Argentinian dictatorship, it was not uncommon to find graffiti of silhouettes on walls. These were a reference to Los Desaparecidos, or the disappeared, those who were kidnapped by the military, tortured, and eventually murdered. Totally unrelated, meanwhile in New York, there was a visual artist named Richard Hambledon, who would graffiti very similar silhouettes around the city, which he aptly named Shadow Men. While recording this album in New York, Charly was walking through the streets of Lower Manhattan and spotted one of these Shadow Men. Bearing such resemblance to what he often saw back home in Buenos Aires, he sat by the wall and had his photo taken. Next to the Shadow Man was another piece of graffiti by a local band during that era called Modern Cliques. Upon seeing the developed photo, Charly simply translated the name Modern Cliques to Spanish, and that became the title and cover art for the album. He later mused that the title is not only an announcement of the album's content, this new sound with samples, polyrhythms, drum machines, and state-of-the-art synthesizers, but that the word cliques also symbolizes the shooting of a camera. It encapsulates a snapshot in time, the beginning of the 80s. The first track, Nos siguen vagando abajo, which means they keep knocking us down, is essentially about living in a time where malevolent censorship was relentlessly everywhere and living a lifestyle which was not in line with the sociopathic ideals of the dictatorship was simply not on the cards. Ironically, the title of the song was actually Mortal Sin, but the record company didn't allow this and had it changed. It's one of 3 songs on the album whose names were forcibly censored in this way. It begins with the distinct sound of a Roland TR-808 drum machine, which continues throughout the remainder of the song, and this high-pitched squawk of a synthesizer. Then comes in this iconic guitar riff, which is played in 7/4 and contrasts well with the 4/4 timing of the drums. Next, the synth emulates some strings here to add more vibrancy right before a drum fill welcomes in this funky bass line, which is, to a famous YouTuber who reacted to the song, just unbelievable.
What's that bass? Oh my god. That is the fattest bass I think I might have ever heard. This is just a masterpiece. I don't really have the words to describe how much I like this. I almost ejaculated, and I don't feel guilty.
So the song is now in full swing, then Charly sets the scene by telling the tale of a couple who are about to be married, but instead the groom is beaten by soldiers because in their eyes it is a mortal sin. Then the chorus comes in and there are these guitars which seem to be dueling, being played turn by turn in full stereo goodness, bringing funk and power to the progression. Charly is going for it, singing about the physical oppression they all faced. The bass is sliding along and up and down to keep the groove, what with the electronic instruments pulsating tirelessly, right before transitioning into the musical passage to the second verse. The energy does not stop for a second, and often Charly doesn't even take a breath between going from verse to chorus. El ser desmayó delante de mí, no fueron las pastillas, fueron los hombres de gris, which means, he passed out in front of me, it wasn't the pills, it was the men in grey. So, during the dictatorship, it was common to be followed by these men in grey or men in black. If you were seen as a threat to their cause, which was essentially total control of the country, they would take any measures necessary to silence you. This resulted in many public figures being censored, forced into exile, or tragically murdered. Charlie himself had previously been stalked, arrested, and interrogated about the meaning of his lyrics, which only led him to use more and more metaphors which could not be understood by the military and their leaders. So in this narrative, there are people being attacked right in front of you, and there's not a thing you can do about it unless you want to meet the same fate. Then comes the bridge, which is preceded by this scat song melody, which adds to the song's danceable and upbeat personality. The verse translated says, "Ma ma ma, I'm leaving, I'm like a light going out. From the floor I could see them, crazy with pleasure, walking away." The use of Ma here is most likely a reference to the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, who were a group of women, essentially mothers and grandmothers, who had lost loved ones to the military's iron grip and actively protested against these killings. This leads back into the final chorus, followed by a 2-bar instrumental section with only the Roland, the guitar riff, and a little synth, before the bass comes back in and brings it all full circle. The guitars and synth become layered, creating these exquisite melodies, and now this pseudo-string sound is more like a mellotron. Drowned in all of this are these little yelps, these screams by Charlie. I think they're an expression of raw emotion, anger, frustration, and possibly even a little hedonistic fear. The adrenaline is pumping at maximum capacity. This is all amidst this joyous, rhythmic, new wave pop sound, which inundates the listener with a sense of normality and lightness, despite the lyrics dealing with an extremely dark matter. Living in this time and space, desensitization must have been rife. No one was safe, and instead of living in fear, the people chose to do their best to still enjoy the things in life which couldn't be taken away so easily. The second track, No soy un extraño, which means I'm no stranger, has a slightly more laid-back temperament, opening with the droning of a single synthesizer on a basic drum track. The vocals are breathy with this effect on it to enhance the soft emotional sensibilities, assisting in conveying this suave call to urgency with strong melancholy. The lyrics tell of coming to terms with being in a new city and realizing that it's actually not all how you imagined it. In the first verse, he's just arrived in New York and he is overwhelmed with surprise. He's suddenly hit with the fact that this city is different to how it's been presented in the Argentinian newspapers. He goes to a bar and sees two men holding hands and dancing an authentic tango together. Coming from a country where homosexuality was violently repudiated, this is a shock. He doesn't know what to do and can't stop watching them, so he lights a smoke to sidetrack and hide his feelings while he thinks about this. He hypothesizes, "No hay que pescar dos veces con la misma red," which means you mustn't catch two fish with the same net. This is an interesting line which becomes the central theme of the song. It's one of many metaphors which Charlie uses in his work for which he is well known and revered. In his own words, he has said that this loosely means one mustn't use the same parameter to measure a different reality. He is saying that he is not accustomed to this way of life no matter how much he has read or heard about it. In a way, he is stubborn. It's hard to change his own perception to be accommodating of everything he sees around him because it's all so alien. He's now walking through the streets, watching the passing lights, the plaza, and the colors. And he is fascinated by it all and in a tempestuous frame of mind. It's alucinante, as they say. As much as he wants to believe otherwise, he is indeed a stranger to the city. But then this smoke fills his nostrils, which he recognizes. His feelings change, and he feels energized to be one with his surroundings. Someone approaches him and starts talking, to which he responds, "What's up? Want to go catch two fish with the same net?" Again, Charlie later commented on the meaning of this and said, "It's like a way of saying, well, I'm new, I don't know much, and I'm willing to accept something new. To think that joy is in discovery and not in repetition. Joy is in change." Not only is he expressing that one ought not fear change, that they should embrace it for its potential benefit, he is also conveying the concept of out with the old, in with the new. To follow tradition is a rejection of progress and the breeding grounds of putrid stagnation. The penultimate stanza follows on without halt to the last, giving birth to the sense of urgency. He feels the need to hurry and get out this final statement. The unprejudiced are those who will come, and those already here will matter to me no longer. The jailers of humanity will not catch me twice with the same net. So let's unpack this. The unprejudiced are those who will come. In this specific context, this refers to the LGBTQIA+ community. They are currently discriminated against, but after seeing this couple in the bar, he predicts that this will change. He now has hope that this freedom of expression will make its way to South America too. They will become the unprejudiced. And those already here will matter to me no longer. Here, in this context, doesn't necessarily imply a physical geographical location. Think of there being a distinction between those who are oppressed and those who aren't, and having them standing in two clearly separated areas. So the ones who are already here are those who more or less have as much freedom as anyone else. And they are the ones who need not fight a daily struggle just to exist. Charlie is saying that these people are fine on their own and do not need his sentiments as much as those who do need help. Therefore, he can focus his concern on challenging this status quo to bring forth a system in which his fellow people in Argentina are as free as the strangers that he finds in New York. The jailers of humanity are the Argentinian military, those who put a lock and key on liberty as we know it, and they will not catch me with the same net. Charlie now has a new mindset. When he returns to Buenos Aires, the military will not be able to crucify him as they have always intimidatingly warned. They may destroy his body, but they cannot destroy his moral compass or rob him of his beliefs and succeed in completely silencing the message that he has to deliver. The song continues as an instrumental, and the synth is imitating the sound of a bandoneon, a uniquely Argentine adopted instrument. I like an accordion, but is typically used for tango music. The placement of the sound here could be the audible portrayal of the return to the country. It's interesting to note that this emitted sound almost appears sad, as if the bandoneon is weeping. About this song, Charlie has also said, "One thing that we need to have is a disposition to change. We are used to only a very small change, adapting to what reality dictates us and not adapting to how we really feel." 201 or 201 is the shortest song on the album at just 2 minutes and 1 second, which is likely where the name comes from. The song is sung in the third person, but is essentially about Charlie's fans accusing him of selling out. A famous 1982 concert of his was sponsored by Italian fashion label Fiorucci. The reason for this was due to the extravagant stage production created solely for the one concert, which was designed by Renato Schusheim, a leading figure in the fashion movement of Argentina at the time. The stage was built up with this massive cardboard city skyline. During the last song of the evening, No Bombarden Buenos Aires, or Don't Bomb Buenos Aires, they set off an intense showcase of pyrotechnics, simulating bombs being dropped and destroying the city. To fund all of this, the choice was between raising ticket prices or being sponsored by Fiorucci, an idea Charlie didn't like but reluctantly went with, having his fans' wallets in mind. Before the record company chose the title 201, the track was initially called Tranzas, which literally means you trade or you transact, but colloquially means sell out. The lyrics are about a guy who quits producing protest songs, who takes up studying, cuts his hair, quits smoking and moves to heavier drugs, loses touch with his children, somewhat loses his fame, but remains preoccupied with his newfound lifestyle, and in doing it does okay for himself. As well as being the shortest song, it's also unique in its instrumentation. It's very minimalistic with this Uruguayan African beat known as candombe, complemented with the sound of a tabla. Some sources say that this is a reproduced sound from the Roland, others say it's a physical tabla being played. To me it does sound like a physical tabla, and the fact that American drummer Casey Chevrolet is credited as having played a tabla, I'm going to go with that. The melody is driven by some layered vocal harmonizing and a single piano, and there's a tiny bit of bass, synth and electric guitar in there too. There's not a great deal to the song, which I think adds to the dynamic. It's a phase, it comes and goes. Charlie is blowing off those who call him a sellout for ultimately going above and beyond for his audience, for his people. The next phase now seemingly sees Charlie back home, sharing his newfound outlook with those around him and offering what he can to improve the lives of his fellow Latinos. He's just returned from New York, but he may as well have been in the trenches of the Malvinas War. The title Nuevos Trapos, which means New Rags, was initially intended to be the title of the album until ultimately deciding on Clics Modernos. The song begins with the Roland for a whole second before the band comes in, sliding and popping bass by Aznard, intense hammering of the keys, and drawn-out drones from the synth. It takes a hold so tight that once the vocals begin and the instrumentation relaxes to let the story unfold, you've barely a choice but to pay attention. It begins sounding like a love song, but you soon realize it is, but in a way that is seldom found. It's a love for humanity, it's faith and hope. He wants to see us flourish and be the best we possibly can, and in order to do this, we need to change our ways. He philosophizes this with a single line, No soy mejor que vos, vos no sos mejor que yo, meaning, I'm no better than you, you're no better than me. He is attempting to break down the walls not only of patriotism, but also the egotistically judgmental attitudes which separate us all in terms of social status. No one is beneath anyone. We are all on the same playing field. Enter chorus, and he extends this idea by saying, even if we change the color of the trenches, and even if we change the place of the flags, it's always like the first time. I think he is hinting at the idea that we don't really have ownership of any land anywhere. There were always other inhabitants here before us, be that the Homo sapiens, the more archaic hominoid species, or otherwise. The idea that you can place some individually coloured flag somewhere and use it as a marker to henceforth claim total power and rule really does begin to sound absurd, because it is if you think about it. He continues, and while everyone keeps dancing, you see two kids who are still looking to meet for the first time. This is reducing the concept to the most primal urge, necessity, and reason of human existence at its core, which is love. While everything is happening around us, everyone dancing, or playing their role, whatever that may be, the world continues to revolve and people continue doing what they have always done. We keep trying to live. He comes closer to relating this to the dictatorship and the Malvinas War by saying, having shared that terror, having lived together in this total desolation, it's no longer necessary. He knows that those who have lived through and experienced war understand its irrational uselessness and would rather do without it. You can look one another in the eye and despite all your quarrels, at least agree that we can do better than ending up at war with one another. After this preaching for common ground and compassion is done, the song is led to its fade out, closing with an impressive improvised jazz sax solo by saxophonist Doug Norwine. Fun fact, Doug is actually the same dude who played the saxophone parts for Lisa on The Simpsons. This sax solo is both clean and concise, while also raucously edging the line of sanity with unconventionally high-pitched flourishes. It's pure self-expression, and if it makes someone feel uneasy or reel back, I think it has accomplished in what it set out to do. This theme of compassion and empathy is carried on now with Bancada Ser Efecto, which in 2022 terminology, for lack of a better literal translation, more or less means own that shit. It's about not trying to be someone else by hiding what you perceive to be your flaws, but in reality are unique characteristic qualities that make you, you. To deny your inadequacies renders you a less adaptable human, living a more superficial existence, unable to accept others as you should yourself, and lacking the ability to offer the greater world the gift of sui generis cultural perspective. Although Charlie is speaking directly to Argentinians due to their third world nature, the idea's reach can be applied to any group of people in organized society. It begins with this upbeat melodic piano which has clear jazz and pop influences and is backed by a subtle but strong rhythm from the Roland. This only lasts for a few bars before hitting a wall with the first verse's musical antecedent. Bass, drums, and a dark piano ring out in unity to set the stage for the message that Charlie is about to relay. He begins with, Están pasando demasiadas cosas raras para que todo pueda seguir tan normal. Meaning, too many strange things are happening for everything to continue as normal. The vocals here are more in your face and speaking with fierce passion. Listening is no longer a choice. Ignorance is increasingly futile. He continues, I distrust your informed face and your survival instinct. About this, Charlie himself has said that the survival instinct that Argentinians have adopted is a false one. They accommodate to a regime which is foreign to their condition as human beings. He thinks that the systems which his nation is choosing to follow assist in keeping them blind to a larger picture, and disallow them to pursue greater, more ambitious and fulfilling lives. He is irritated at what he sees, and more so that no one seems to want to do anything to change. The second verse optimistically surmises that this way in which people mask themselves to appear as someone better will not endure, and he refers to this as a deadly trap. Following fashions and aspiring to be like the people who are propelled on plastic podiums, showcased as role models, essentially kills the person you truly are, and what is left living is someone who does not exist. To show your defects is to be real. This is a crossroads. The two diverging roads are being yourself and realizing your true potential, or playing the fool who lives up to false expectations and never really becomes anyone. Charlie urges that you mustn't let your defects belittle and dwindle you down. Let them be nourishing, let them be virtuous, let them be a symbol of strength to be worn on your face, like a tool to be used at your disposal to mold your path with great luminosity. Next in the chorus, Charlie says, back that defect, it's not your fault if your nose doesn't match your face. Back that defect. Even if you fix yourself with rubber, you'll keep on being weird. This is very direct and attacks the misguided lifestyles of self-obsession and irrevocably toxic self-castigation grounded on the loose and failing pillars of venomous hatred. There comes this slight interjection of an upbeat, jingly, keyboard-driven solo right before it's ramped up overhead into the most forceful and aggressive rhythm of the song. Mutilated, malnourished, deformed, glass eye, show your scar. Dance the dance of the intelligentsia. I suppose what Charlie wants to say is that despite one's obvious physical flaws, they still walk the same as the upper class who control and influence the culture. The underdogs who struggle to survive are in a way striving to be like those who ultimately maintain the status quo, such that the poor remain poor and the rich richer than ever. Everyone knows us by face, everyone notices by the way you dance, is a concretion of the conveyance of superficiality, a deprival of depth, drowning in the shallow. Although you may be able to dance or act just as the higher-ups, society will still see your face with all its deformities. This is what sets the classes apart. Charlie urges that you ought to show your scar, take pride in it, and don't crumble into nothing by trying to be something that you are not and never will be. The song has an elongated instrumental outro which allows the listener sufficient time to be pensive and consider where they stand and how they dance and how they make their face. Without a doubt the most pop-based track on the album, and also known as the first song ever to sample James Brown, this is definitely my least favourite track, but it still does hold some importance. Estoy verde, no me dejan salir, meaning I'm green, they won't let me out, is the principal premise of the song. For years, people have come up with their own varying conclusions as to what this greenness is referring. Some say jealousy, others nausea, others say drugs. I personally think it is a sickness, a disgust for the confinement in which he and his country are placed under the rule of the dictatorship. Their lyrics are pretty straightforward, singing about what you can't do, what you can't have, and the life you are losing. The instrumentals are interesting though. You have this driving, solid 4/4 rock drumming, but the bass intro is slathered with funk, and an added effect is giving it a synthesized electronic edge, which makes it sound not too far off 8-bit music. This sampled James Brown's scream, which is essentially the song's hook, acts as an instrument, being played on each beat along with the drums. After a short bridge, Charlie sings Ya no sirve vivir para sufrir, te das cuenta, sacate el mocasín, which means, it's no longer any use living to suffer, don't you realize, take off your moccasin. The concept of a moccasin here is clever, as in a single word you can picture the stark contrast of the victims and the perpetrators of this dictatorship. Originating from indigenous tribes, the moccasin is the footwear of peasantry. In the 80s, which was a highly fashion-drenched decade, even in South America, American-influenced and imported sneakers would have been highly popular, and moccasins would have been seen more and more as a sign of poverty, of repression, and of submissiveness. Charlie is telling the people to leave their chains behind. He is both figuratively and literally telling the people to stand on their own 2 feet. The song then continues with the usual chorus and hook until the fade out. It is a shame that this is the only song on the album for which a video clip was made, because it really has, in my opinion, the least to say artistically, politically, and socially. The pop element is very strong with this song even to this day. It's one of the most played songs of Charlie's on Spotify, and if you actually go to Argentina, you can still sometimes hear this song being played on the radio. In terms of depth though, it is a polar opposite to the next track. Okay, there is a lot to say about this song. To begin to scratch the surface of its significance would require quite a few history lessons in the history of Argentina, in particular the military dictatorship from 76 to 83, but let's focus on the music first. Piano by far takes the lead and the spotlight in this song. Being Charlie's mother instrument, it only makes sense due to the seriousness and the emotion that is being delivered. In fact, the piano parts in this song are some of his most covered material ever. Los Dinosaurios begins with the drone of a synthesizer, like a siren, like a warning, before the instantly recognizable piano riff begins. It plays once before you hear a guitar, which is played by Larry Carlton. Larry was a highly sought-after session musician in the 70s, being booked into thousands of sessions with artists of high calibers, including Joni Mitchell, Steely Dan, Jerry Garcia, John Lennon, and Michael Jackson, just to name a few. Charlie later commented in an interview that upon meeting, Larry was subject to interrogation. He asked him, "Why do I like the records where you play with Steely Dan or Joni Mitchell more than your solo albums or with your band The Crusaders?" To which Larry bluntly replied, "Because the solos I play with Steely Dan and Joni Mitchell are written by Steely Dan and Joni Mitchell." This assured Charlie that he indeed had the right man for the job. The result was a drowned out echo-heavy electric guitar having its strings pulled, like its neck is being strangled. This is a very fitting segue to the lyricism, which is not at all far off asphyxiation. The vocals are breathy, ethereal, and angel-like. In tandem with the piano, there are the right conditions for this song to be an 80s, 90s, or early 2000s melancholic love song, but the subject matter could not be further away from this. Beginning in March of 1976, Argentina was under the rule of a military dictatorship led by Jorge Videla, who had recently been appointed General for the Armed Forces High Command. He rallied troops, overthrew the government, and referred to his army as the National Reorganization Process. He announced, "From this date, the country is under the government of the armed forces of the General Commanders. Strict compliance to all inhabitants is recommended, and extreme care is to be taken to avoid individual actions or thoughts which may require drastic intervention from the operating personnel." Fearing criticism of their crimes against humanity, newspapers were shut down, TV personalities were banned from appearing in the media, and musicians' lyrics were closely monitored prior to release. This meant that Charlie and all his contemporaries in music were blacklisted. Many of his song names would be changed, as in the instance with this album. His lyrics will be censored, and some of his songs actually never saw the light of day. He would find himself being followed, watched from afar, and even escorted to prison and interrogated on the meaning of his lyrics. Any resemblance to leftist politics could result in this drastic intervention taking place. And Charlie knew they were not kidding. He had known people who had been kidnapped and tortured, and he'd heard the stories of the death planes. The military would kidnap someone who they saw as a threat, fly them out over the ocean, torture and interrogate them for information, strip them of their clothes, and then push them from the moving aircraft to their instant death on impact. Children playing on the beach would find naked bodies being washed up. In the late 70s, Charlie had already been exiled to Brazil as it was far too unsafe back in Argentina, where eventually an estimated 30,000 people had been forcibly disappeared. To fly under the radar, he used metaphors in his songs, which the military could not understand, while his fans knew exactly what he was saying. And this is how we were blessed with Los Dinosaurios. In the 3.5 minutes that make up this masterpiece of a song, he sings about the uncertainty of a future, of life, the very fact that at any moment you can disappear, and there's not a thing you can do to stop it. The song is bookended by the chorus, in which he details that no one is safe.
Los amigos del barrio pueden desaparecer. Los cantores de radio pueden desaparecer.
Los amigos del barrio pueden desaparecer. Los cantores de radio pueden desaparecer. Los que están en los diarios pueden desaparecer. La persona que amas puede desaparecer. Los que están en el aire pueden desaparecer en el aire. Los que están en la calle pueden desaparecer en la calle. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, you are a temporary person. He is saying this regretfully and with deep sorrow. How did we come to this? Why must we live in constant fear of being murdered by the very people who are meant to be protecting us? He ends the chorus again by stating that your neighborhood friends may disappear, and then something interesting happens. He adds a but, and finishes with something else of a different tune.
Los amigos del barrio pueden desaparecer, pero los dinosaurios van a desaparecer.
Pero los dinosaurios van a desaparecer. He uses this metaphor of dinosaurs in reference to the dictators, as they share characteristics in that they are brutal, wild, powerful, and more importantly, old, outdated, and due to disappear. And shouldn't they have already become extinct by now? He is saying that no matter how many people they kill, no matter how many people they silence, and how much they try to control the country, their own judgment day will come, and their reign of terror will see its rightful end. The people have the power and always will overcome. The piano riff now changes to become a hint more chaotic and lacks a straightforward melody, as a verse paints the picture of living in unrest in a time of desperation and violent horror. No estoy tranquilo, mi amor, hoy es sábado a la noche, un amigo está en cana. Oh, mi amor, desaparecer el mundo. Si los pesados, mi amor, llevan todo ese montón de equipaje en la mano. Oh, mi amor, yo quiero estar liviano. Okay, so imagine yourself in this scenario. It's Saturday night and you want to be out and enjoying yourself. Instead, you're stuck at home. You're thinking about your friend who they have thrown in jail because they have been perceived as a threat. You don't know if you will ever even see them alive again. Before your eyes, the world is disappearing. Outside, patrolling the streets is the military, armed and without a single moment's hesitation to use lethal force. This equipment or luggage in their possession is a double entendre. It both signifies the physical weaponry they are carrying, as well as the baggage, the guilt, the blood that is on their hands, and the memories of the faces of all the innocent Argentinians who have met their untimely fates. And for those who were kidnapped but not killed, they were held in concentration camps or jails, of which there were about 300 set up across the nation. Charlie says that he wants to be light or clean. He wants to avoid being a target. He wants to have a clear conscience. He doesn't want to be weighed down by everything that is happening around him. And this leads to the next stanza.
Cuando el mundo tira para abajo, es mejor no estar atado a nada. Imaginen a los dinosaurios en la cama.
Cuando el mundo tira para abajo, es mejor no estar atado a nada. Imaginen a los dinosaurios en la cama. This is reinforcing the desire to be light. When everything has gone haywire, those standing in the path of destruction are seen as resistance and need to be removed. They don't even have the chance to quietly move out of the way. They are taken down with everything else that's falling. If one does their best to stay out of the way, to not make themselves seen, to not paint themselves as a threat simply by existing, increase are their chances for survival. But at what cost? If no one stands in the way of impending doom, how will it ever end? Charlie tells the listener to imagine these people in their beds. He wants you to know that at the end of the day, these people still retire to the same place everyone else does. At night, they lie in their bed and are just as vulnerable and defenseless as anyone else. Although in the streets wrapped in their camouflage and metal, appearing to be indestructible, the reality is they are not. Perhaps before sleep, they even think twice about what they are doing and have some kind of moral dilemma rattling incessantly within their brains. This is expanding on the concept from No Soy un extraño of I'm no better than you, you're no better than me. The music takes to a spacious instrumental passage with more of this moaning, whining guitar as well as a piano solo. This is allowing you time to think. You reflect on what you have just learned and how you naturally feel about all of it. It is an effective way to induce a wide array of feelings in the listener and soak in the sobering gravity of the theme. We now come to the final chorus of the song. Charlie's voice is now oozing with emotion and fierceness and a passionate desperation to relay his message. His vocals are layered to give the music a more whole, well-rounded finish. The piano is more confrontational than ever, sounding like he's pounding away on the keys, taking out his anger, frustration, and confusion. There is a slight cool-off where he calms and takes his foot off the gas, but only for a moment in order to retrieve the breath and the muse necessary to vamp up the heat once more, bringing it higher than ever. He is now on the verge of screaming. You can picture him smashing down his fists, his eyes clenched shut, imagining the faces of friends and family who have been mercilessly kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. The veins in his neck full of blood and wrapping around his vocal cords like pieces of rope, strangling his voice as it scratches and distorts to get out these final words. Los dinosaurios van a desaparecer. Silence, everything stops. End of song. It's damn near impossible to follow a song like this, but this one at least tries. It has the most poetic lines in all of the album, I think, and it has this crystal clear imagery being planted in the mind's eye, one syllable at a time. In essence, the song is about the fleeting opportunities in Argentina to be who you wish, to do what speaks to you, and live your life unencumbered. It begins with a synth and some nicely orchestrated guitar lines, then it stops. Some keyboard chords ring out, and in creeps the bass, which will be at the forefront of all the instruments. Then it all comes together and paves the way for the first verse. I saw the moon dripping its cathedral light, an old ship crossing the sea from South America to Europe on a mirror full of salt. Aeroplanes cutting through the cellophane of a tropical sky, opening furrows to lead into exile, or the return to those who could not take it anymore. Footprints in the sea, blood in our home. Why do we have to go so far to be here? So to examine this, the crossing of the sea is about exile. Those who could not take it anymore are the exiled. Footprints in the sea is a metaphor which Charlie himself has explained like this. Have you ever seen a footprint in the sea? No, because it doesn't exist. But it does exist in a very split second. What the song is saying is that everything happens very quickly. Why do we have to go so far to be here? And here is the place of our dreams, of our accomplishments. These footprints could also be a reference to the people exiled, as their very existences seem to be so short, as if they too are being erased in the blink of an eye. Another verse comes and speaks of Charlie staying in his country due to a labour of love, a faith that things will improve. Those who left were striving to create better lives for themselves, to obtain freedom of expression not only through their art but through their lifestyles. But in doing so, they have paid the price of leaving behind their families and their friends. Algunos hijos son padres, algunas huellas ya son la piel, which means some children are parents, some footprints are already skin. This is again describing how fast time is moving. The chorus repeats and then we come to the outro, which is A cacophony of layered guitar solos played by Larry, Charlie is melodically plucking at the keys, and that bass which has plowed its way through the whole song is still going strong. Now we come to the final track, Ojos de Videotape, or Videotape Eyes. This is by far one of Charlie's most popular songs of all time, and I have never understood this. At one point, I even had an Argentinian girlfriend who called this song a masterpiece, and I just never got why. Only actually upon reviewing this album have I begun to understand why people revered this song so much. The composition is beautiful, and it is crafted in such a way that it becomes a perfect ending to such an album. I don't think that it would fit anywhere else other than the closing. The song is piano heavy, and Charlie sings in this soft, breathy voice, which gives the impression that although he's tired and nearing his wit's end, he still has the will to go on. He still has hope for what is to come. He sings about what he lacks, what he doesn't have the strength or the heart to do anymore, and empathizes this with, "Can't you see that I'm waiting to resurrect?" He says, "The examination of good and evil is coming. Coming is the news across the sea. Don't you see that the world is turning upside down as you look into those videotape eyes?" He's talking about himself, the world around him, his own world. The examination is what the jailers of humanity decide to be just, and depending on where you fit into their criteria, well, I think you get the gist of it by now. He continues in the chorus, "This world will forever miss the movie I once saw, and this world will tell you that it's always better to look at the wall." Here again is this reoccurring wall, which plays a huge role in Charlie's oeuvre, the album art being just one example of that. This can be interpreted as facing one's obstacles rather than looking the other way. The wall is the construction of the rulers and is public enemy number one. However, walls are often utilized when a film is being projected, lending this idea that therein lies the unfolding sequences of life. To look at the wall is to watch one's life, to be conscious, to have open eyes, and to never miss a moment. The movie he talks about may be the movie of his life, what he sees. He has videotape eyes. He is the videotape. It is interesting to note that he says he saw this movie once. Again, here is this element of ephemerality with the reminder that life is short and fragile. Film is a vulnerable medium, and with the passing of time comes the increased chance for the film to be erased, damaged, or lost to the void. The fact that his world is turning upside down may have been a premonition for the changes which were about to come, but seeing as everything was already topsy-turvy, it was actually a return to normalcy. Ojos de Videotape is Charlie giving the listener a warning to heed, a lesson to learn. This life happens but once, and you'll miss it if you're not watching. The song begins to close with several guitar licks, piano and keyboard runs, and Charlie's voice in sync with a synthesizer. It's a well-composed, tight but loose instrumental ending which fades until there's one last snare hit and the album is over. Through the several different elements of musical genres, the complexities of the lyrical content, and the overall user-friendly ability to diversely accommodate to people from all different walks of life, I think it's no doubt that Clix Modernos has been and continues to be very successful. The structure is pristine, the opening track captures your attention, the songs sprinkled throughout allow you to rise and stoop with different emotional responses, and the final song creates a pleasant closure. You can come out of the other side feeling like you have grown and that you are now a better person for having listened to it. This album was truly a landmark in music in the early 1980s and has been a constant influence, well standing the test of time. Charlie once said, "Deep down, Clix Modernos is like a demo, but made at Electric Lady Studios." And if that's the case, it is one hell of a demo. As Robert Plant once said, the whole idea of music from the beginning of time was for people to be happy. So if I don't enjoy the music, that is my loss, and if someone else does, more power to them.